Did you overdose?
Yeah, I probably overdosed like 10 times maybe.
So was there a one-off event that made you decide to change?
The change didn't come until the pain of remaining the same was greater than it took to change. I got to a stage where I think I was suicidal, but without doing it. I want to be the voice of the voiceless. I want to leave an impact.
What would be some parting words that you would want to give to your people? We got special guest here today, Jarvis Atkinson, proud Yorta Yorta man from Shepparton, Cumragunja, a.k.a. Chainbreaker. You went from the streets to jail to rehab, and now you're representing your mob in the political space. That's what your dreams are.
100%.
Tell us about that, brother.
It's been a long journey, my brother. And, I met you in Odyssey. You played a big part of my journey too, and you're all a part of my journey now, And so, growing up was pretty rough. I grew up in an era where, we sort of, a lot of my people came, from the missions, moved into the towns, and we lived on the fringes, and we went from not being accepted into things like football clubs or football leagues, or into social public social spaces. And I come from a long line of strong activists and people that stood up for our people to have better living conditions and to strive like any other normal people out in community. And growing up, I grew up with my grandparents. I don't know my biological father. I had an identical twin brother. He passed away at birth. My mum being probably like 21 at the time. She's probably going through a lot, the loss of my brother. And being young, my grandparents stepped up and said, we'll take him. You still want to sort out what you're doing. And so I'm forever grateful for my grandparents, stepping up and taking me. They already raised like 7 children. My mum being the only girl, 6 brothers. So I grew up with them, and I was like their little brother, but I was their nephew, So I had all my uncles around me, and it was so good. I really had a strong bond with my uncles, and they were carpenters and football players, and my grandfather, like, he was my world. He was my dad. I don't know my biological father, so I looked at my grandfather as my dad. And there was a time where, he used to smoke and he'd drink a lot of alcohol as well. And, he used to work at a place called Decca. So we grew up in the north end of Shepparton. I grew up on Cameron Avenue. And Decca was like probably a K or 2 from our house, but how he used to get to work, he has to walk through this massive paddocks, and probably cut across a few like little dams and stuff, and he'd go out there and he'd mow lawns every day, and then he'd come back. But I remember I came home one time, and my grandmother says, we've just came back from the hospital, your grandfather's had some tests done, and they found a tumour on his left side of his lung the size of a Sharon football. And I share these parts in my life because it really rocked me, because I'm already going through like resentment and abandonment from, not having my biological father around. And I always used to look at couples, and I'd see kids with their mother and their father, and I used to sort of like fantasize and think, wow, I wonder what that'd be like, And I knew I had my twin brother that passed away, and I used to see brothers, and I always wanted that. So my cousins, man, like, they were my brothers, like there was no, like, we were related, but I looked at them like my brothers, and we shared something similar, like all my cousins, and my sisters, my sister girls, and we all grew up with our grandparents, and our biological fathers were never around. And so we shared that, and so they called their grandparents, their grandmother and their grandfather, you know, dad and mum, or dad and nan. So it was always like dad and nan. And yeah, so my grandfather had that tumour on the left side of his lung, and he had to go to Melbourne to have an operation. And so he went down to the St. Vincent's Hospital, and my grandmother says, "Do you want to come? You know, it's a 50-50 chance that he might make it." And I said, "No, I'm going to stay at my uncle's on Cumra," you know. And so they went down to Melbourne, and I remember just feeling real like guilty because I knew it's serious, and I was only like, you know, probably about just going on 11 or 12, I think. I haven't got that right yet, but I know the age was around that time. And so what happened is he gets he does this operation, and they cut him from the front of his stomach right over his shoulder and down his back, and they operate on him, and they cut this tumour off him. And I was like like a sharing footy, you know, probably like the bladder in the footy or something. And it was a success, and it was good. They got that off him. They said, "Look, you can't drink no more, you can't smoke, otherwise it can come back and turn into cancer." And so he comes back to Shep, and we leave Shepparton. We leave Cameron Avenue. We keep the house. My uncle takes over, and then we move to Cumragunja, back to the mission where my grandmother, you know, were raised as kids, and they met each other out there, you know. And so we go back there, and I see this side of my grandfather that I never seen before. It was like, it was so free, and you know, he was back on country, and so we were there for some time, and it wasn't long until he like picked up the cigarettes again and picked up the alcohol, and then he gets diagnosed with cancer. And so he's going through chemotherapy now, and we decided to move from Cumra back to Shepparton so he could be closer to the Golden Valley Base Hospital. And, you know, I'm watching my father now, and I remember saying to him at a young age, you know, "Please don't ever die on me," you know, before all this, you know, because I had that abandonment. And and I'd say to my grandmother too, "Please don't ever die on me." And they'd say, "Don't be silly. We're never going to leave you, you know."
Before we dive back in, a quick shout out to our sponsor, Gallant Law, led by my friend Lauren Casamadis, an accredited criminal law specialist in the state of Victoria. With over 20 years' experience, Gallant Law brings deep courtroom know-how and genuine care to every case. They handle everything from driving and drug offences through to serious indictable charges through to regulatory matters like WorkSafe, ASIC, APRA, IBAC and coroner's court proceedings, always with the focus on protecting your future. What I really respect is how Lauren and her team treat people with empathy and clarity when people are facing some of the toughest times in their lives, guiding them not just in court, but beyond it.
And so now I'm watching him deteriorate before my eyes, and it's doing something to me as a young fella. It's like it's making me want to avoid coming home. And, you know, so I'm out getting up to no good, and I'm you know, experimenting with life, and you know, I'm starting to smoke cigarettes and drink alcohol here and there, and you know, smoke a little weed here and there and stuff like that. But I'm at my cousin's place, and it's like 3 a.m. I wake up just out of nowhere, and it's almost like I just wake up and it's like I sweat, and I'm like, I just knew something was wrong, and I had to go home, and I get up and I tell my cousin, I say, "Open the door, I need to go, something's not right." And he lets me out, and I jump on my BMX and I ride down Packham Street, and I turn into Cameron Avenue, and as I turn into Cameron Avenue, everything just goes real dark, like it was already dark. You know that 3 a.m. dark?
Mm.
It's like different to any other dark. It's like there's no cars on the road. It's like just quiet, and it's just you. And I could hear my thoughts. They were loud, man. You know, and as I'm riding towards my house right down the end of Cameron Avenue, and these thoughts in my head are just getting loud, and they're saying, you know, you should be doing this, you should be doing that, you know, you shouldn't be out getting up to no good, and what are you going to do if your grandfather dies, you know, you messed it all up, or, you should be home helping them, the grandparents, and I should be at home helping them mow the lawns and do stuff like that. And so my anxiety is just like building up so like heavy, and my heart's pumping, and I'm riding towards the house, and I turn into the house, and because I know I need to wake him up to get inside. And so I get off the bike and I walk up to the front door, and the front door was here. My grandfather's room was right next to the front door, and so I knock on the front door, and I hear him get up out of bed. And by this stage, the next day is his last day of chemotherapy. So he's went right through the course, and he's lost all his hair, and he's like lost so much weight. He's like, yeah, just not looking good. And when he gets up, I could hear all the pain in his body. Like he's like moaning, like groans and moans, and like just to get up to come to the door. And he comes to the door, and he opens the door, and he just starts giving me a lecture. And he's just fed up. Like he just like, why don't you help me? Why don't you stay home? What have you been up to? He didn't know what I was up to, because I started hanging around a place called the Ghettos. So the Ghettos is like right at the end of my street, Cameron Avenue. You got Packham Street, and then you had like Olympic Ave, and the Ghetto like was all like housing commission flats, and there was all these different connections to the other ghettos and all these alleyways, and just 98% of it was just like dealers and crims, and people just getting out of prison, and stuff was always going down there. There was something always going down. It was hectic, but so he's giving me a lecture. He's ripping me. He's telling me, "What are you doing? Why are you always coming home late? Why aren't you helping us?" And so, out of nowhere, he rips the sleeves of my jumper up, and he says, "Are you using syringes?" And I'm only like 11, 12, and I just get really shocked, because he just scared me to think that he thought, he didn't know what to think, but to think that I was using needles, because where I was hanging out, that's what they were doing up there.
Yeah.
And so I say to him, I promise I'll never, ever do that. I promise you I'll never, ever do that. And he says, I'm finished. I've had enough. And I said, I'm just going to get a drink of water and I'm going to go to bed. And he turns around, he walks down the hallway, and I go to the kitchen sink, and I lean over in the tap and I get a drink. And as I'm getting a drink, I hear this choking noise. And my grandmother yells out, and she says, "Call an ambulance, son. I think we just lost your father." And my heart just dropped, and I before I even went to the phone, I run straight down to the room, and I just looked at him, and he was gone, And so that really rocked me in my life, and 2 weeks after that, 2 to 3 weeks after that, maybe a week after my grandfather's funeral, I'm with my cousin, and we're at the BMX track, and it was a lovely sunny day, and we were having fun, and I'm staying at his house this night. And so we decided to go to school to play basketball. We pick up some cousins on the way, and we go from playing basketball to jumping on the roof, and we end up on the roof, and there was a shade cloth over the assembly area, and it was like a circus tent. It was like massive, like 15, 20 feet high, and to get on the shade cloth, you had to like jump nearly a meter off the roof and land on this cloth. And we'll climb up this cloth, and we're jumping off it and sliding down, and it starts to get dark, and I say to my cousin, "Let's go. Your mum will be looking for us." He goes, "One more jump." He jumps, and he falls straight through that cloth, and he lands on his head, and I jump down, and I run up to him, and he's unrecognisable, and it's just another thing in my life that just rocked me, And so from there, I just went off track. I just started getting up to no good, and it gave me a reason to just chase drugs and chase feel goods, and trying to suppress all that trauma I was feeling. I felt guilty. I felt like it was my fault.
So did you carry that guilt with you all the way until made the choice to heal yourself. But
Yeah.
like, what damage did you do during that time, man? Because like obviously like that street thing, when you talk about your area, how everyone's selling drugs, doing this, straight crimin, and like with what happened with family, to abandonment issues, like it's very easy to fall into that life and the drugs become the catalyst of your interactions. Like what did that look like? I mean,
like I was hurting, and hurt people, and I everywhere I went, I sort of corrupted people. I feel like for a long time I was probably like a bad influence, because I don't know, it was just like I was on this destruction path, and I was willing to try anything, take anything. I got three beautiful children. I got my two oldest kid. They have their mother, and then my youngest daughter has a different mother. And like 2 times I had an opportunity to do the right thing, and I opened the doors up and I bring whatever I was picking up with me along the way into them places, into them safe environments. And there was like arguments, and there was police interaction, police coming to these houses, and alcohol and drugs in these environments, and that wasn't good. And I started to steal off people and do the wrong thing to people, and so it really them environments became, like I said it before when we were at Port Melbourne, and them environments became like a paradise for me, because I was surrounded by all these people that were going through trauma. They were dropping out of school early, and they didn't know their parents, and they might have been wards of the state, and they were just coming home from 10 years in prison or big bids, and it was a paradise for me. There was rap music, there was drugs, it was, and a place that you need to, the one-stop shop, you need to suppress all that stuff, was right there up the road from my place.
Because it feels like home, when you're going through trauma, you trauma bond. You bond with people that are going through exact same shit as you are, escaping their reality just like you are, and you develop a sense of like, I'll call it a brotherhood, where it's all these other things, like you build trust by doing an earn with someone. You build trust when they're backing you on the street, and it becomes very toxic. And you just meet more and more people in that lifestyle. Like
100%.
Like we're touching on it, but like without a role model, who did you even look up to in them times?
Yeah, were your cousins your uncles, were they into all that stuff as well, or not? Because you said they were carpenters and stuff. So were they trying to constantly pull you out?
Yeah, they was, bro. Like, I probably had like one uncle that sort of, was similar to me. He was off the rails. He done some prison, and he used drugs, and so. But my other uncles, they were always like trying to pull me out or trying to encourage me, and their actions used to speak real loud to me, because my uncle my uncle Mark, he was really an inspiration to me too, as well as all my other uncles. They inspired me all in different ways. But my uncle Mark was he was a gun football player, and he played for Lemonos, and I remember at one stage in my life he was taking me and like picking me up and taking me to eat, and he'd take me out the bush and we'd do training together, and like he'd teach me and try and show me the ropes. And he ended up being a coach at Rumballara Football Netball Club, where I'm the vice president today. And he became, like, I think the league best coach like 2 to 3 times in a row, if I'm mistaken, maybe 2, 3. But he was my world, and like he was really inspired me. But I remember when them values shifted. I remember dreaming about to be a football player or AFL player, or working just like them, and then I started valuing the people that were doing 10 years in jail, or I remember fantasizing about going to prison. I don't like. It was just crazy. It was like we talk about the channel and the frequencies and all that stuff, and like, you know, I started thinking like the people I was hanging around, and the shift in my values. Yeah.
Because they become like your role models, you know, especially when you don't have any present in your life. The people from the street that have done years, it's like their resume, and you end up becoming to, one, look up to them, and then two, trying to be like them. And then, just getting caught up in the dragnet. And a lot of people get lost there for years. For years.
So how did you start getting into that, like, criminal lifestyle, bro? Like, obviously fucking started taking drugs, you're hanging around the boys from the area, but like how'd you start committing crimes? Or
Yeah, I think it just started off with the little crimes, you know. It always starts with the little crimes. Like I said, like my grandfather used to drink a lot. And I remember one Christmas time my uncles bought him like a homemade brew kit, and he'd fill up all his own bottles, and he'd have all these empty long neck bottles, and he put them in the fridge at the back. And I remember waiting, thinking, I can't wait till he falls asleep and I'm going to go break into the shed and I'm going to steal the alcohol. And so I go and break into his shed. I'm only like that. This stage I was like 7. So the first time I ever stole, and I stole off a family member, off my grandfather, my father. And I broke into his shed and I stole a bottle of alcohol and I jumped the back fence. And I snuck down to my cousin's place and I was like drinking it and, you know, trying to get some feel goods off that. But because that's what I seen, you know. I seen my grandfather drink, and my uncles would drink too. They drink with my grandfather, and I remember sort of like I wanted that same sort of relationship that they had with their father. So I felt like he's my father too, you know. I wanted that same bond. But I was pretty hectic as a kid. Like I was jumping the fences at 7. And I was taken off, and my grandfather, I remember one time he on the fences, so you had the house and then you had the fences on the side of the house. He put barbed wire up on the fences.
Maximum security.
Jarvis Atkinson.
It was Max. Like it went from open camp to Supermax real quick.
But it's funny what you just said about, you know, the whole drinking thing. You know, like because you've seen all your cousins or your uncles doing it, and it might bring you closer, you know, to him. Because I had that experience too. Like I met people that didn't use, but then get a habit, and they've said things like, yeah, because I seen the way you talk with other people that use, and your connection seems real strong. That's why I wanted to use. And it's, you know, it's that thing that we learn about whether it be people pleasing, you know, feeling part of that. We do these things, you know.
100%.
So was there a one-off event that made you decide to change, or was it just from seeing your uncles and they became a source of inspiration for your change?
I think it had to, like, it didn't come, like, and I'll share this, like the change didn't come until the pain of remaining the same was greater than it took to change. You know, so I was on the rocks. I got back up. I was on the rocks again. You know, I tried detoxes heaps of times, and all the broken promises, and, you know, all the near-death experiences, you know, all the overdoses. And
did you overdose?
Yeah, I probably overdosed like 10 times maybe. Probably a little bit more or less. I haven't got the exact number. We'll have to dig the archives at the hospitals. But I overdosed a few times, you know, because like I said, I was on this destruction path, and, you know, I got to a stage where I think I was suicidal, but without doing it, you know, without grabbing a rope, or, you know, I was just taking anything and everything. I had no value for my own life. You know, it really showed in the way I used, and, you know, I'd take anything and everything, and I was extreme. You know, like I'd go 110% in that life, you know. So there was no like have one now, save one for later. Have it all now.
Have it all now, mate.
Chase it later, you know. And So yeah, and then like I got to a stage where all that was left was me. You know, I didn't have no more reasons to get right except for my children. And yeah, like I was left until I was left with only 3 options, and I heard you speak about it earlier. You know, I was over death or jail or give it 110% and get your life back. And death and jail were looking easier than that. You know, so I was starting to accept these 2, and I was like, well, I've got these are my cards. I'm dealt with them. This is the way I might as well go out. Maybe it's best I stop coming in and out of my children's life. You know, maybe it's best that my community is better without me. You know, because I became a burden, and I became like a cripple, like a lame, in community. You know, where there was people I was seeing in their eyes. You know, people were really thinking I was going to die, or they couldn't. There was no more hope for me. You know, and I believe there was people out there praying for me, 100%. I believe my mum, you know, never stopped praying for me. But there was a lot of people that were doubting me. And so it was that last time I was in the Shepparton cells, and I was ready to give up. And I talk about that fire. That fire was about to go out, and, you know, I had no more spark left in me, and I reckon my flesh was, you know, deteriorating, my body, my tissues, my muscles, my bones, you know, and I had this memory that I was holding on to as my kids, you know, just doing the right thing and standing up for my community one day, and it was becoming like a dream that I couldn't make come true, you know, until this worker came from Odyssey House, and she walked in and she had in her hand a application. She says, sign this application, give it 110% and go and get your life back. And I'm looking at 5 years jail at the moment. I'm in the cells, and I say to her, nah, no way. I'm not going back to Odyssey, because I've been there once before. I done 8 months there. I was on the methadone program. I came off 135 milligrams. But I was there for all the wrong reasons, you know. I was there and I was still like materialistic, and, you know, had the boob walk and had the TNs, and TNs are grouse anyway, but but I was wearing them in a different sort of headspace, and but yeah, and like, so I was like, nah, no way. And she says to me, so the first time I was in Odyssey, my son come to see me. He was only 11, and there was a tree in the reception, and on this tree, visitors could write on a piece of paper a wish or a prayer. And my son wrote on a piece of paper, all I want is for my dad to get off the drugs forever. And I pushed it down, you know, because I couldn't make it come true. And when I seen that on that tree at that time, I was like, I'm going to make it come true for your son. But then I relapsed and messed back up. So I felt like I couldn't make that come true. And so she reminded me, she said, you remember that prayer, that wish your son made? And it just broke me, you know, tears just came down, and I picked a pen up and I signed that application, and there was something different this time, you know.
At About Time for Justice, we support and advocate for survivors of institutional child SA, people who have struggled with bad mental health, drug and alcohol addiction. We set up this organisation with the compensation money I received for going through the trauma. This is for anybody who went through any schools, private, public boarding, any churches or church-run organisations, any foster care systems, any ward of the state under the age of 18. We also help survivors who have bad mental health or illness, or who have physical injuries, look at potentially claiming on their superannuation. Please reach out if you want to have your own.
Well, let's speak on that, because I went into Odyssey House in 2019, and it was the first rehab I've ever been to, right? And they said, Dennis, there's a group you need to go to. It's called Transitions Group. It's basically a group where all the crims go in, because they got different struggles, you know, always fighting the system and that. And so I walk into this group, and who do I see? I see I see Jarvis there, and he's facilitating it. And he ain't chain breaker then, but from where I see it start, it's an amazing journey. So I walk in there, there's all boo beds around, and Jarvis is leading it, and I'm like, when you're from that life, you can recognise when someone else has been about that life. And I seen Jarvis there, right? And done a bit of jail, and in jail back then, I don't know how it is now, but it's all about races, And I seen Jarvis there, and the way he was speaking, it was well composed and it was educated. It wasn't like, what's doing in that, cuz? Hey, bruz, fuck these cunts. It wasn't none of that. And just from someone that's from the street or done that jail, seeing someone elevate just in their composure and their etiquette, I sat back and I listened, and just the way you would speak back then. Like, I wasn't run that rehab then. I didn't have a voice. I didn't know how to express myself. But for seeing someone that come from that life, being able to be vulnerable and speak, it connected with me, Jarvis. And it was very pivotal for me. It was my first time in a rehab, and that's when we talked about lived experience. Yeah, you can have clinical this or that, but once you hear someone that's actually lived it and speaking on it and standing on it, the message carries weight, and just little things like, I remember the rehab that we went to, you could make phone calls, to your family or loved ones that have been approved, right?
Yeah.
And I was in this rehab and I haven't rung anyone yet. And Jarvis is there, I only just met him, He goes, hey, you want to ring your mum? I go, and I had no self-worth then. And I go, no, I'm all right. He goes, can't. I can ring her. I'll screen your phone call, because in this rehab, you couldn't just pick up the phone. Yeah, I'm just going to call someone. You got to have someone else there, that also has someone else there listening to you call in case I'm saying, I'm trying to get in some bupe or some, or drugs or whatever. And Jarvis pressed me and goes, ring her. And like, I was being dismissive, but he kept on voicing it. And subtly and subconsciously, it's like, no one's really even pressed that, out on the street, like, hey, ring her, or, do something. And in that moment, I got to make that phone call. Jarvis was present on my very first phone call in rehab, and it tied that connection, to my mother, because it's like every time I go to jail, I never called the family, and just like seeing you where you're at now, from where you came from, because it's like your journey from, like, when story about, the street and jail, and then I know it personally from rehab, but then once we got out of rehab, I'm already networking with Troy and Jacob, and I'd call you and I go, hey, brother, what are you doing? I see you doing your things in your community. Go, you ever thought about jumping on social media? Because the mob need a role model, because I don't really see many out there. I'm guessing there are some, but not on my algorithm. I go, someone needs to unite and rise for your people. And I go, and it might as well be you. And from then, I remember talking with Jacob. Jacob was in town. I go, hey, I know this guy Jarvis. He actually goes speaks in jails, and so do you. I go, we should link up. And remember, we were on the roof of your apartment building, and me and Jacob, we're doing our thing, and it's like, hey, Jarvis, let's do it real. And so, we're holding the phone. We're holding the phone for him, right?
Put it up there on TV, that real.
I go, you ready? He goes, yeah. And then, bang, he's just spitting it off the cuff. He's like spitting bars, and he's like, and me and Jacob just looking at each other. And he goes, how'd I go? And we just like applauded him and go, mate, you did that off in one cuff. I go, what do you want to be called? He goes, I want to be called Chain Breaker. And from then on, he's just been breaking them chains for his people. I actually seen him on a march, speak in front of like a lot of people. And when he was doing his thing, going, I'm Jarvis Atkinson, proud Yorta Yorta man from Shepparton, Gunja, a.k.a. Chain Breaker, the whole street went off. So I just want to commend you, bro. And not just that, is just like, thank you for being part of the journey of Rundo Rehab right from the very start. And yeah, it's just a blessing seeing it go full circle the way you helped me then from my first phone call to me helping you. And now, you know, you linking up with Jacob Little and the Knockaround guys. And then you guys hosted an event called About Time for Connection in Shepparton. I mean, and now you're doing this whole thing, running to be a candidate for your people. So it's like, bang, stacking one win on top of the other, and I think you're going to do amazing things, bro. And yeah, you got the support of the Knockaround guys because you came from that life, and now you're giving back. So I don't know what else more to say, bro.
You want me to respond?
Yeah, bro. I was just leading them up. I'm just warming. I'm just warming up the crowd, bro.
That's a drop of mic. That's drop the mic.
Yeah.
Nah, yeah, 100%. The journey's just been crazy, and like, you know, it's all come down to this, you know. And I think that's why I believe God, like, it's divine, bros. Like, there's no way I can explain it. Like, you know, and I speak about, you know, when I was in Odyssey, and you know, I met you, bros, and you know, you came and you seen me in my moment where, you know, I might have looked like, you know, I was presenting good and I was leading the way, but I was running off responsibility. Like I channeled this thing, like that, this fuel that, you know, helped me stand up in these rooms and talk. I knew I had a responsibility to break this person down I become through all that life and that trauma, and I had to help other people break that person down too. So that's where I had the confidence to teach people the right way in Odyssey. And in transitions group, that's a perfect example, you know, because we was in this transition stage. And, you know, I remember my first program, like I was boobed out for 8 months straight in there, you know, and like there was no changing me.
Let's be honest.
Yeah, but, and there was people was just like pulling me up on it. I was getting grouped and I was getting communicated and I was getting pulled up on it, and you know, it wasn't getting through to me. And then this second time back, you know, I remember my son, his prayer, his wish, and then my daughters, you know, and then my community and my ancestors, you know, they didn't do everything they did for me to just run it up the wall. And just, you know, it was like a disrespect to them. You know, if I'm going to continue drugging and drinking and doing crime, you know, them marches and them protests and them elders that, you know, passed away in the dream time with that dream and that hope for a better future for our people would have all been for nothing. And I was like, you got to get your act together, bro. And as I'd be looking in the mirror and I'd be telling myself all the time, like, you better, when you get up in the morning, you're going to go down them stairs in Odyssey House, you're going to speak up in that group. You're gonna write a communique. You know, you're gonna use the groups, and you're gonna lead people the right way. Now, you know, for a very long time, you was leading people the wrong way, and so I was running off that fuel. Yeah, and you know, bros, I was in Odyssey, and I used to catch the bus from the back of Odyssey House, and I was doing an AOD course. So, first time I went back to school in like maybe 15 years or 15 to 20 years maybe. And I was catching this bus, the 905 from the back of Odyssey. I'd get it all the way into Hoddle Street, and then I'd jump on the 246 and I'd get to 246 all the way down Hoddle, and then jump off down at I think it's Bridge Road, and then I'd go down to Swinburne Uni. And so on this bus, I'd be sitting there early in the morning. I'd have all, you know, early in the morning, you just got your thoughts running through. And, you know, I would have just said my prayers and, you know, reading my daily devotions and all that stuff. And I go on past this brick wall, and every day I go past this brick wall, there's this big spray paint and it said treaty on it. And I'll be like, every time I went past it, it was like a punch or another brick of inspiration, and it was just like just this fire. Every day I'd like, I need to, how am I going to play my part? And I'd be thinking, what's treaty? And you know, then I'd remember my people screaming for it, and and I'd be getting these visions of my people marching and screaming for a better day, and so it was just planting inside of me, this seed just every day, and every day I'd go. The first time I went past it, a seed planted. The next day it was getting watered. Every time I go past, more water chucked on it. And then, fast forward, 3 years after Odyssey, maybe not, about 2 years after Odyssey, I find myself in this room where I'm listening. I'm in the Treaty Yarna circle, and I'm looking at my colleagues that I work with and my boss that was, and the first time I was in that room, I looked at him and I said, I can do this, and a part of me, the negative part, was like, you're fantasizing, you're tripping, what do you, and so, probably 12 months after that first Yarnan circle, I just in that 12 months time, I just kept rocking up, kept showing up, wanting to learn about treaty, wanting to participate. And my boss, she seen something in me, and she was meeting me after hours, and she was so shout out to Stephanie Ross, much love, like you invested into me, and you seen something in me, and you really you gave your time up for me after hours, and she was teaching me about the process and about everything that involves a treaty and where it came from and the history of it, and so for 12 months, and a position came up. She said, you should apply for it. And I said, I haven't even got a resume. I was just doing traffic, and I've done demolition, I've never worked in community before. She goes, you've got the connection of community. You've got relationship, you've got lived experience. Like, I've been homeless, I've been affected by AOD, I've got caught up in all that stuff, and it was a skill that I carry, and I have empathy for people that are going through that, and I believe that's what it takes to make real changes, to be operating and functioning off them that fuel, that empathy and that lived experience, and so she said you want to run your own event. I'm not even employed at the moment. She gives me an opportunity to run my own event. And so I do my own event back in Shepparton, and she goes, we'll support you. You just got to organise it. So I had to reach out, and I got, like, my first event, I got 70 people there. I got 70 enrollments. And I organised, we had a welcome to country smoking, and we had a performer, and then I had to create my story itself because public narrative is so powerful. When we share our story, people can connect. And so I wrote my little story, like it was only a 5-minute one, and that was the start of my story that I tell today. And I speak about, my first time I remember ever doing a robbery on Kamragunja. And, I would have been probably like not long after my grandfather probably passed. And I was with my cousins, and we were way at the back, Kamragunja, and we were dancing around this fire. And it was a sunny day. And one of my uncles were playing the didgeridoo. Another uncle was on the clapsticks. And another uncle was like cheering us on. And there was like 3 or 4 of us, or 5 of us maybe. And we danced. We were doing this dance called the rain dance. And we danced and danced until the rain come, And I seen this look in my uncle's face and in my cousin's face, and I was all so proud. And it was a moment where I was so proud in my culture that I will hold on to it forever, And then I sort of fast forward from that, where, I end up in that life. So I hold on to that. But now, I'm at this stage in my life where I've been in the treaty process now. I worked at the First People's Assembly as an engagement projects officer. I was in Metro for 12 months. I've been back in Shepparton for 2 years now. working in the Northeast. And in that time and through this job, I got to go back into the prisons. You know, I've been going back into prisons. I've been going in all the rehab centers, and through my public narrative, I've been able to connect and inspire people to get involved. And, you know, so I've invested a lot of time into this space, and now it's time for the elections. And I put my hand up to run as a Northeast candidate. You know, I believe I want to be the voice of the voiceless. I want to create better pathways for people that are coming out of prison, and pathways to help them not get into prison. I want to, you know, push more truth telling. I want to, you know, I want to leave an impact, and it's all about legacy, and it's a responsibility, you know, that we don't get to choose as Aboriginal people. Like, I feel like at some stage in our lives, we will be faced with this fight to, you know, and I look at I'm a grandfather now too, and my granddaughter, my son just had a little girl, and so I want to make it easier for her, and not just for our mob as well, but for non-Indigenous people. Because if we don't do something now about it, what we're saying is we're saying we're going to leave it up to our grandchildren to pick up the pieces. You know, we can get over it now, all right, sweet. But when it comes up again, our grandchildren are going to be at the same stage in life, trying to navigate through all these policies and all this stuff to you know, bring change. And yeah, so I'm running because I have that fire and I have that desire to make a difference in Victoria, in Australia, in the world, in my community. And, you know, I believe it's all come down to this. You know, everything that I've been through has led me to this point in my life. And I said, like, it's not about running. It's not about a position. Like, I couldn't not show up if I tried. You know, I just had this passion to respond to every email, every message, even every DM on socials. Like, I had people say, "Oh, I need advice," or "I need help," and it's just in me to respond. You know, and that's what I'm doing today. I'm responding. You know, and I'm running for that seat. And
yeah, it's deadly, brother. And I'm saying you engage in community too. Like, as Dennis said earlier, we had our About Time for Connection event in Shepparton. And it was a big event. We had like 200 people there. And this is for people that are going through all the things that you just discussed, you know, going through jail, going through trauma, you know, survivors of institutional SA, people trying to get better, trying to get out of that life of addiction, which, you know, all of us have lived in this room. We got our next one coming up on the 28th of March in Doreen at Lorimar Cricket Club. It's a free event, like the last one was, from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. We're going to have lived experience speakers, Jarvis. In between lived experience speakers, we're going to have a boxing exhibition, matches. Dennis is speaking. We got Jolie B speaking. We got Cap Carter speaking. We're going to have face painting. We have jumping castles. We're going to have employment opportunities for people who have lived experience, criminal lived experience. You know, sometimes it's hard for us to get a job. And Jarvis, you were lucky. I was lucky I started my own business. But some people aren't so lucky, bro. So I know you want to pave a pathway for your peoples, you know, because yeah, that's what, you know, that's where you landed, brother. But tell us a little bit about the timelines and how what's the enrollment process and who can do it.
So I'm running for the Northeast community elected seat, and so you need to be a Northeast traditional owner, or you need to be First Nations people that's lived in Northeast for 3 out of 5 years to enrol and have your say. And so you can enrol on firstpeoplesvic.org. So firstpeoplesvic.org, you can enrol, and you can when you enrol, you will have electoral voting power. So this is different to the state elections, you know. So if you don't vote, you don't get fined or nothing like that. This is just so you can have your say and who you want to represent, you know, your region or your traditional owner group. And so that's the process of enrolling, and you need to be 16. So you can be 15 to enrol, but 16 to vote. And so campaigning has begun. Campaigning nominations opened on the 16th of this month, and they will close on the 2nd of March. And then voting will open on the 27th of March and close on the 12th of April. So in between the 27th of March and the 12th of April, there'll be a team from the First Peoples Assembly going around all over Northeast and all over Victoria with all these voting booths and at your local co-ops and, you know, treaty offices in the area, and you'll be able to come and vote and have your say. So, yeah, if you're in the Northeast region, vote 1, Jarvis Atkinson.
Yeah. If I could, I would, bro. Is there an opportunity for treaties to come down to the About Time for Connection event so people have the opportunity of the day to, if they are from Shep? Because I feel like people are going to be coming from Shep to the day.
Yeah, 100%. I reckon we can organisers invite them to come out to the event. It'd be good to have them there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's an opportunity too for non-Indigenous Australia or Victoria to get involved with the treaty process too. So there's a place on our webpage where you can enrol to be a partner of, you know. So I think they call them, partner of the treaty process. So you'll still get informed on all the events that are coming up. And,
Yep.
you know, we have, like, the staff, we have a lot of First Nations staff, but a lot of all different nationalities and backgrounds. Like, it's massive, you know. We can't do it without the support of non-Indigenous Australia as well, Victoria.
Yeah, I think it's beautiful what you're doing, as in, when it comes to politics, I don't really understand much, but what I do understand is people. And, like, I know you, Jarvis, as in, not just story, but, like, I'm talking about the struggles. Like, when we were in rehab and you're doing that AOD course, you got to get a working with children's check. And I remember sitting in groups, you know, like within that rehab, and Jarvis will be there again. Yeah, knocked back. And, like, he got knocked back, not for ages.
3 years, man.
3 years, long time. Yeah. You know, when I jumped into rehab, you know, he was a senior there. And I caught up to him. You know, it took about, I don't know, a year. So we were in the same peer group. And to still see him then still getting knocked back and still pursuing it, you know, even be on the phone and go, hey, man, you just got to keep pushing. You know, I was coming in with that mindset. And to do what you do with your work, to see what you've done with your social media, to see what you've done now you're moving into the political space. I understand work ethic and I understand people, and just from what I've seen, and considering that big part of our journey was leaving rehab, and seeing a big part of the journey was seeing a lot of people fall off. When people ask about you, like when Jacob asked about you, you know, linking up, I go, yeah, I've outside all the way, because I understand that the behaviours matches your word, and that's what I love about you, bro. I absolutely love the projection you're going down. Just someone's got to shine the light, bro, and it might as well be you.
So on that, I want to come back to something, so I know we've spoken about it before. Now, Victoria lost its shit when the no vote got no, and then the treaty come through. Everyone in Victoria was like, we voted no to that. How did it get pushed through? And you explained it to me that the yes and no vote is totally different than the treaty. So can you explain how they're different and what the actual treaty is?
So the yes and no vote are totally different, because this is for Victoria. The yes and no vote was for Australia as a whole. And so this is not a permanent voice in Parliament. This is a representative body that will be able to have more power. It'll have some power to make decisions that affect First Nations in Victoria. this new body that it's going into Gullang Wal, the Assembly went for negotiations with the state. The state agreed, to a treaty with Victorian traditional owners. To mention too, Australia is the only country in the world that does not have a treaty with its First Nations people. The only country in the world. So, and it's the youngest country in the world. And that just blows my mind. Like, it's taken, so just for example, just say if they went to New Zealand, like the British or the colony or whatever you want to call it, went and colonized another country. It wasn't too long until they had signed a treaty, They've waited now, it's been 250, 260 years until they said, all right, we're going to do a treaty with you. So here we are. Victoria said, yes, we're going to work towards a treaty with you. They know now, through bridging the gap and all the statistics that what they've been trying hasn't been working. It just hasn't been working for First Nations people. First Nations people know what works best for them, and the state have acknowledged that now, and they've said, all right, we want to work with you to help bridge that gap. And so they've said yes to a treaty, and now we went into negotiations, and some of them negotiations we negotiated. There was like 100 recommendations that were brought forward from what we've heard from engaging over the past 5 years with all community and what they said they need and want in terms of like all the statewide matters such as health, justice, education, housing. And 100 recommendations came out of that, and that the state have agreed to a few of them recommendations. And so that's what the new body will deliver. We're going to deliver, the curriculum. We're going to be teaching, true history in the curriculum. And we will be able to continue the truth-telling process as well. But we will have some power to hold the state to account on all their commitments that they will make to us, and we'll be able to make sure they follow up. And so right now the state has total representation. Like they can say where we should have funding, or they can say how much funding we can have, and they can say how long we can have it for. And so basically our people have been on this trip for that long, like this. So we're in a state of dependence, so our co-ops, our services have been operating off dictation of the state and where they put the funding and where they take it. And so right now we want to put that power back in our hands so we can become, one day financially prosperous, and we don't have to put our hand out for handouts no more. We can become, fit to carry our own needs and represent our own, future. And it's all about self-determination, We can create better pathways for our peoples, like I said before, in and out of prison. We can create, make sure the schooling and everything is good, and our healthcare and all that stuff. Does that make a little bit of sense?
Yep.
Yeah, because that's all we're saying is saying let us drive our own vehicle. We've been like in this state now, in this time as like, had total like, we've been overrepresented, for a long time, and now we just want to take the driver's seat, and we want to say, support us to get to a stage where we can take the training wheels off. We can walk, and we can have lawyers, and we can have Aboriginal judges, or we can have our culture visible and at the forefront of society. I want to walk down a place like Little China, but I want to walk down a street that has all Aboriginal food and shops and and stuff.
Are there
like
any?
that. They are, but there's there's some, but they're slowly coming out now. You know, so I think you go to them cultural shops that sell all the fake artwork and stuff like that, and people, tourists, you know, they that's what they visualize. You know, well, we want to show them, yeah, true.
Oh, we love your vision here at the Knockaround Guys. From breaking chains to being a role model within your community. What would be some parting words that you would want to give to your people?
Yeah, I think never ever forget where you come from. You know, never forget where you come from. Never forget where you came from, because you got to know where you come from to know where you're going. So that's something powerful. Like, I think my journey, you know, I sort of forgot where I came from a bit, and I guess when I started feeding that, I felt more confident in my path. Always, you know, remember your elders, and you know, just never give up. You know, never give up, and always keep striving, and you know, just one step at a time. That's all it takes.
Jarvis Atkinson, a.k.a. Chain Breaker. A big thanks for coming on the Knockaround Guys with Troy from Complete Health Geelong, Jacob Little from About Time for Justice, and myself, Run That Rehab. And, can't wait to see what's in store for you for the rest of the year.
Thank you, my brother. Thank yous.